Wow, super wow. Is that embarrassing? The stream, I clicked start stream. It said it responded, and then I have been talking here literally to myself for the past 40 minutes. I deeply apologize. I'm a new YouTube live streamer, and by all means, I did not intend for that to happen. Once again, my apologies, because that was not anticipated at all. And it was a great stream too. Unfortunately, nobody saw it. So let's talk about what's going on here. First off, we've had some tornado warnings going out, and that is something we're covering here. When it's in metropolitan areas, these tornado warnings have mostly been basically on the southwest coast near the Everglades there. So I'll let that scroll on by there. Yeah, now I'm the director now. You guys, you know what? You guys can say everything you want in the chat, because, and you know what? That's kind of made me sweat a little bit. So if I'm a little bit shiny here on camera, you'll know why, because wow, that is embarrassing. So I guess we learned, that'll never be a mistake that I made again. So, and I apologize for all of you waiting in the chat, and I'm sitting here thinking, why are you asking me all these questions? All right, let's move forward here. So what happened is that the storm has made a bit of a jog to the east, and so what's happening here, and I feel like I'm repeating myself because I did all this. The storm made a jog to the east there a little bit, and so the new track now is a straight line once again. It was kind of bending there for a while. Hopefully you could see that in the stream, and maybe you didn't even see that. I'm glad that everybody was bonding there on the chat. So the old line was kind of over here, the track line there. This is the new track as a 5 p.m. on the center point there, and you can see that it is a little bit to the left. You know what? Let's get right to the advisory. Oh my gosh, you guys. Let's never bury the headline, so I'm not going to start from the beginning here. Let's get to the details right away, okay? And I was thinking, how come you guys, why aren't you guys, and here I am talking this and that. Okay, so here is the advisory for 5 o'clock, moving north at 10. The pressure's down. Winds are 120 miles an hour, making it Category 3. As I've said many times here, the cone only tracks where that center point's expected to be, but the storm is not a center point. It is a big feature that's growing in size here, and so you can see the wind field now expanding eastward here. This is the 2 a.m. position here, and there are the tropical storm conditions marching up into the Keys here, getting deeper and deeper into the middle and upper Keys and over the southwest coast. So the window is closing very quickly now on the southwest coast to finish preparations. That's the 2 a.m. position. So let's go forward here. There we are, 2 p.m. tomorrow afternoon. That's Category 4 is the forecast. You can see the hurricane conditions extending as far south, according to this advisory, as Naples, and as far north as about Sarasota, almost into Manatee County, and east of Fort Myers. So it's important at this point not to worry about where that center point is going to be, not to focus on that. It's more this whole red area here. That's what we're concerned with. And as we get closer to the storm reaching the coast there, according to this timeline here, it's going to be tomorrow afternoon. As we get closer to that point, then we're going to be worried about the core of the storm, the hurricane core of the storm, because that hurricane core, that part of the storm is going to do the most damage. That's the destructive part. That's when we start telling people it's time in your location to hunker down. Too early to say where that's going to be, but that's something we're watching very closely. You'll notice also the tropical storm conditions have spread into southeast Florida as well. Southeast Florida now is under a tropical storm warning. All of the Keys under a tropical storm warning. In fact, I'll show you here in a second, the tropical storm warning extends all the way up through the east coast of Florida as well, a hurricane watch there. So that's where we stand right now, as you can see, is the 2 p.m. position there. Moving forward here, there is the 2 a.m. position, and it's forecast to begin coming down in intensity. Still forecast to be Category 1 at this point, but coming down in intensity. Tampa Bay still too close to call. I know a lot of folks think sometimes that this is an all or nothing thing on the north side of the storm. Sometimes it can be, but there's still too much uncertainty at this point to rule out a direct impact of the core of the hurricane right over Tampa Bay. You can see the hurricane conditions extending once again south to Naples and covering the entire, the tropical storm conditions covering the entire east coast there. There is 2 p.m. on Thursday. Thursday forecast track is now for tropical storm, but look at the red area, shows still the possibility of hurricane conditions there reaching the northeast coast of Florida there as the storm begins to exit across Florida there. That's 2 a.m. Friday morning, and then after that it's on to the north and could make another landfall in Georgia up the coast there. So there's the whole cone there. You can see all of Florida is under tropical storm conditions or hurricane conditions at some point in time, except in the Panhandle, where it looks like this track a little more to the east here. It takes the Panhandle out of the direct threat there. So let's look at the watches and warnings now. I explained this in great detail when nobody was listening because I wasn't streaming, but you can see the hurricane warning now down to Naples, and any area in red here, which goes almost to the east coast, including Orlando and Tampa. Any area in red here should be putting up shutters if you haven't already. And the only exception is that if you're in the evacuation area or in a mobile home, you should leave that area. Hurricane watch is on the southern side here. That does include Collier County, eastern Collier County, as well as Lake Okeechobee, because of the possibility of hurricane conditions. In the warning area, that's where hurricane conditions are expected. You can see all of the Keys under tropical storm warnings, as well as all of Miami-Dade and Broward, also Bimini, as well as the Abacos and Grand Bahama there. Maybe it's just Grand Bahama, but parts of the Northwest Bahamas under it. Tropical storm warning all the way up the East Coast. Tropical storm warning for coastal sections into the Panhandle here. And let's take a look at the storm surge. The warning has been extended up the West Coast here, and also for St. Johns River and the northeast part of Florida there. So certainly a lot of things going on here. The tropical storm watch continues for the Keys, still looking like 2 to 4 feet there. I will show you the timeline again that has taken place with the shift over the last 24 hours. And now that you can hear me, now I can answer questions. I was sitting here kind of talking to some of you, answering questions. So tropical storm warning for Broward, right? Tropical storm warning for Miami-Dade, tropical storm warning for all of the Keys. In fact, if you're not in a hurricane watch or a hurricane warning, you're in a tropical storm warning, except in central and western sections of the Panhandle. So let's talk about kind of what's happened here. Now I can break down that line and everything. So on this graphic here, what I do is I put the track line there for like the next 24 hours because we're able to kind of stare at it and watch and see, is the storm center staying along that track line? Now this program kind of does a tricky thing here where as the storm moves, if it tracks to the to the right or to the left, then the line kind of bends to kind of compensate for that. So in other words, if the storm, say, tracked over here to the left, then that line kind of bends like that. So what we look for here is that when that line here starts doing this bendy thing down here where it kind of bends towards the storm like that, that's an indication that the storm has moved to the east of the track, but you can see it right there. So we were talking about wobbles. We've been talking about turns. The Hurricane Center once again forecasting a pretty straight line for the next 24 hours, but it got east of the track from the 5 a.m. advisory. It got east of the track from the 11 a.m. advisory. I'm a little bit of the thinking fool me once kind of philosophy there, but they're of course also watching the models. Now the models have much better performance here, but that's why I was saying earlier at 11 a.m. this morning that if you were in Naples or Collier County or the West Coast Fort Myers, to assume a hurricane is coming your way. So I think that was a good call. So here basically is the track. Is it going to wobble a little bit here? Is it going to shift a little more to the east? It's possible because the storm is going to start experiencing some southwesterly shear, and that does a couple of things. Let's talk about specifically what's going on inside the storm. And quickly, I'm just going to show you this satellite loop here because you can see a big blow up of thunderstorms on what we call the upshear side. If you look carefully here, you can also see that the clouds are starting to get pushed in a little bit here on the southwest side. That is the early indications that shear is starting to take place. And then there's the visible satellite loop, and what you're going to be able to see here, well, it looks like a bigger eye there towards the end of the loop, which is probably not surprising. I'll show you here on the radar in a second. But what you should see here, if not tonight, tomorrow, the eye is going to get clouded over because of the wind shear blowing on it. And that wind shear is going to create the effect of kind of squeezing the impacts of the hurricane, the winds and the rains and the storms to the east towards Florida. So we're going to kind of be on the nasty side of the storm, enhanced by the wind shear increasing the storms there. Quick look at the radar across South Florida here to see what's going on. We've had those tornado warnings off to our west. There's the tornado warning that does include parts of Miami Trail there into Collier County. So there's that tornado warning in effect for another 15 minutes here. One of the things we can track here on the radar is these little triangles there. Those are indications of rotation. There's other ways we can track that. We can look at shear, and those are shear markers. So those are those little bright areas there. You can see kind of some shear markers there coming across Miami-Dade County. No upstream shear markers right now, so that's a good thing for the moment, but the tornado watch has been extended. Let's talk about kind of some of the internals here. And so what's happened here, and this happened with Matthew in 2016, where we had what we called concentric eye walls. Sometimes what happens is that the inner eye wall will, which is right here, will start to get strangled by a new outer eye wall trying to form around it. And that looks like what is starting to happen here, where we have this bigger eye wall starting to form now. And if it forms and the conditions are right, that will begin to choke out the inner eye wall. Now, sometimes that will pause the intensification because now you're talking about a bigger eye. But the bad thing with that is that the hurricane wind field grows, the tropical storm wind field grows, and that eye wall grows. So now we're talking about a larger area with potential impacts. And needless to say, that's probably one of the reasons the Hurricane Center expanded the warnings there, because we now are looking at, and you can kind of see it unfolding here, kind of a bigger hurricane here. So this is, with all the uncertainty we've been dealing with the forecast tracks and everything, this is kind of like just one bad situation that continues to unfold, unfortunately. Let's talk about some of the effects here, the potentials there that are going on. And you can see, I am streaming right now. You guys can still see me, right? I would hate to think at this point that I'm talking again to myself and not talking to anybody because I pushed the stream button and I clicked yes, and for some reason I didn't look down to see if it said stop streaming, because a little light comes on, it says stop streaming. We're going to stop streaming. New YouTuber, unfortunately a bad time for a new YouTuber to find that out. So here's the storm. You can see up here, there's the dip right there, shows up very nicely here, and there's the wind shear. You can see those clouds, the outflow from the hurricane going out and then rapidly going off to the northeast there. Okay, good. Craig's live. Thank you, and I'm alive. And you can also see the dry air that is gradually working its way to the south. There's also dry air that comes off downslope there across eastern Mexico, and that's going to be contributing too. Unfortunately, this process, this slowing process, is going to take some time. It's probably not going to occur in time for the storm to weaken. The storm is going to be making landfall according to the forecast as Category 4. So all bad things here, all bad signs dealing with a major hurricane event. And for many, unfortunately, it's probably going to be a once in a generation and maybe a life-changing event. And in big weather events like this, sometimes we mark time by it, which is an unfortunate thing that things like this happen. Okay, so quickly here, let me go through just this timing graphic here. There's all the watches and the warnings, and this is as we go here. Whoops, jumped ahead there. As we go here, this is kind of like where the tropical storm conditions arrive. There you can see as we go through the night tonight, they spread up through the Keys into South Florida. That's tomorrow morning. They're already over Southwest Florida, so the window of opportunity for any more preparations in the hurricane warning area, they're coming to an end very, very quickly. So tonight the wind builds in southeast Florida and then blows all day tomorrow. So you can see where the leading edge is into Orlando by tomorrow afternoon, and then beginning to pull out of South Florida tomorrow evening, tomorrow night. So it is going to be a windy, stormy, flooding, possibility of tornadoes, bad day tomorrow. Now earlier I was talking about how in the hurricane warning areas expect widespread power outages. In the tropical storm warning areas, you can get significant power outages, not quite the kind that last weeks for large areas, but there can be some disruptions, severe disruptions to communities once we get into the tropical storm condition side of it. So that's something to think there. So the question here, and I appreciate you asking questions now because I said, does anybody have any questions? And because unfortunately I wasn't streaming at the time, nobody was asking questions. So comparisons to Charlie. So Charlie was in 2004. I remember Charlie in vivid detail because I was working it when it was coming on shore. Charlie crossed Cuba and started bending to the right. It moved to the right of the Hurricane Center's forecast track, but the center point was still within the cone. And at that time, there was this thinking that, don't pay attention to the center line. In fact, Max Mayfield, who was the director at the time, the next year at a hurricane conference, said, don't pay attention to the center line. The reason that I put the center line there is because I'm kind of connecting the dots here because I'm not showing the cone that broadly. And the red area here, that's what you're concerned about. So that's kind of the hurricane part of the cone, and the yellow area there, my cone. The yellow area there is the tropical storm part of my cone as well. Okay, so the takeaway from Charlie was that we need to be careful not to focus on where we think it's going to make a landfall in this advisory. Excuse me. As well, the other takeaway was the damage was very intense and over Punta Gorda into Charlotte County, and then Port Charlotte as well, and then marched up US 17, crushed Acadia. A lot of folks never even thought about Acadia. All the attention, of course, went to Punta Gorda. So Arcadia, really, really severe damage. And by the time it reached Orlando that evening, hurricane force winds at Orlando International Airport. So this could be quite destructive. The thing with this storm is, though, it's going to be bigger, so potentially could cover more areas as well. Asking again, I'm in Broward. Thank you, Mary, for asking again. Should we bring in the grill? Yes. Extra propane tanks. I don't think we're going to be impacted as much here in South Florida. I'm bringing the propane tanks, yes. You already brought in the light stuff, so that's good. The grill, if you can tuck the grill up under your patio, and let's kind of talk about this here because that's one thing I haven't shown. So that's a good question because it's going to prompt me to talk more about this with a new graphic. We'll do it at 10:30 tonight. The wind direction here in South Florida is going to be southeast, south, southwest. So for those of you who are still concerned in southeast Florida about shutters and stuff, if you shutter your south side of your house, that's probably the most effective place to shutter. If your grill or if your porch is open to, say, the north or northeast or northwest, and you can tuck things under that side of your porch, you're probably going to be okay. The light stuff still can blow around, but you're going to get a bit of a sheltering effect on the north side of the house from the winds coming from the south. So I hope that answers. Yeah, the track is reminiscent of Charlie and Wilma. I don't think Miami's going to see Wilma-like conditions. Remember when Wilma came through Miami, it crossed kind of northwest Broward and right through Palm Beaches there. This track is farther to the northwest. Wilma was very bad, and most people were surprised because the backside of Wilma was as bad as the front side of Wilma as well. So I don't think this is going to be a Wilma. Fort Myers, Punta Gorda area has had a very rough 20 years. Yes, indeed, that is the case. Punta Gorda, when Punta Gorda was rebuilt after Charlie, they did a lot of reinforcing of the downtown and the structures, which was good. So the track wobbles. The storm has been shifting east. Yes. So that's one of the things I think that we're going to see here with this wind shear, because the wind shear is providing almost like gentle pressure against the storm to try to make it wobble east if it wobbles. The overall steering currents also are trying to lift it kind of to the northeast there. Let's go back to the radar so we can kind of track that center. So there it is, and you can see, of course, right now it's on the track, and you can see it's trackable pretty well. But if you look here, and so what's going to happen here is we're going to, I think, start to see if we do get this secondary eye wall formation, and I'm going to shorten our loop here so we can pay attention to it more closely. So there's the last hour. So if this outer eye wall starts to take over, the inside eye can kind of wobble around inside of that. Excuse me. So we could see kind of like false indications that it's coming right, it's coming left. We're going to have to look at the general motion of the whole center of the storm there as it moves to the northeast. I talked for 40 minutes before even doing the stream. So Miami in play. So everybody talks about hurricane conditions in different ways. If you experience tropical storm conditions, most people will say, I was hit by the hurricane. People that were hit by the hurricane definitely will say they were hit by the hurricane. And hurricane, of course, winds, trees are down, there's building damage. Usually category 1 type of building damage is minimal, sometimes roof damage. Excuse me, apologize. But when we get into the category 2 winds and above, then we start seeing more structural damage. Category 3 major hurricane, that's where it's significant structural damage. Miami-Dade in play for tropical storm winds, absolutely. For hurricane winds, I don't think so. The hurricane force wind threat is very, very low here in southeast Florida. Assuming it hits Naples, current state. So if it hits Naples in the current state that it's in right now, that would be a little more rightward deviation. We would have stronger tropical storm winds here in southeast Florida. We'd have gusts potentially up to 60 miles an hour, kind of like severe thunderstorms that you get. And then you get more power outages when you have that. So, we've been talking about this. I've done almost 2 weeks of YouTube videos on this. And I think from the beginning, I was just reminding everybody, get your hurricane plan, get your hurricane plan together, stuff like that. And mainly in southeast Florida now, our hurricane plan is more so for power outages and flooding, things like that. Southwest Florida, of course, it's for the full thing, the whole storm. The Broward County link doesn't work. Okay, thanks for letting me know. I will fix that. Hurricane warning extend to inland Collier County. I think so, and inland Collier County is in the watch. So my feeling is that if you're in the hurricane watch, you would put up shutters anyway in this case. So St. Petersburg or St. Pete Beach, because they're two different places. So southern Pinellas County. That's hard to say the wind direction there based on this. Let me zoom out here and we'll go back to the model. And I am going to end the stream before I start coughing because I don't want anybody to have to listen to that. So it's really too close to call because if the storm passes on this track there, the center line, then the winds in Tampa Bay will be at first southeast and then east and then northeast and then north and then northwest. There could be significant storm surge flooding ahead of the storm being pushed up the east coast, the west coast there from the storm. So Tampa Bay, you're still in play here as well. I think it's easier to predict the winds here in southeast Florida because we're so far away from that center track that we kind of know the winds as well. Inland Collier County, talked about that. Could the storm get stronger than a Cat 4? I don't think so, and the reason why is because, and we can go back to the graphic. So now that's a tornado warning, and it covers southeast Collier County, and let's see if it covers any. So it's in the Big Cypress area. I'll show you that just to put everybody at ease that it's over the Everglades. That crawl machine doesn't look like it's working right now. So what we're seeing, and this is a good reminder that there's the tornado warning. So it's approaching I-75 Alligator Alley there with that storm. The atmosphere is favorable for tornadoes, and so sometimes you see the tornadoes develop in that type of situation. Let me see if I can kind of force my crawl to start crawling there so you can read that tornado warning real quick. There it goes. So folks on the Alligator Alley there, I-75 are going to be impacted by that storm, strong winds as well as the possibility of tornadoes there. Looking upstream for us, I don't see anything real big still, though there are some shear markers now starting to show up, or areas of shear starting to show up in Biscayne Bay, so we'll obviously keep our eyes on that. The disturbance, other disturbance is on the schedule for next week. So, I always say this when we're going through a hurricane situation, let's take one at a time. Let's deal with the one that we're dealing with, and then we'll worry about that next one. I know a lot of folks, there was, see, now I'm getting to the point where I can remember the impacts, but I don't remember the storms because I've had so little sleep over the past few days. A storm that the forecast track was for a big loop. It wasn't Gene, because Gene, in fact, did loop and came back. The forecast track, though, was for it to loop around and come back, and everybody was worried that that was going to happen. I'm like, guys, we're dealing with the hurricane right now. Let's get through that. Let's not worry about it looping back around and coming on and hitting us again. And of course, it didn't come back and hit us again. Should North Florida worry about tornadoes? So typically, the way that the wind structure, the wind field works in hurricanes is it's what we call the right front quadrant. So, and let me get back to this other graphic here because it's got the hurricane track line on it as well. So all good questions, and I'm so glad you guys are asking them because I didn't think anybody was going to ask any questions. So the right front quadrant here is basically this area here in front of the storm. So this is the area that has the tornado potential. So as the storm goes forward here, that tornado potential is going to work its way up the peninsula. Right now, I don't think that is going to be an issue for say North Florida, Northwest Florida. As the storm weakens, that wind field tends to have less tornado potential. Let me clear that the tornado warning out of there. So many warnings. So kind of to recap here, we have the flood watch, the tornado watch. We've got a few little tornado warnings popping up. Remember, if there's a tornado warning, to get to the interior portion of your house, away from windows, and in the hurricane warning area, once the storm gets closer, we're going to be going to the interior of our home as well. Ivan, thank you, right? That was Ivan that looked like it was going to loop across and come back. And Ivan's track actually did loop across. That was in the storm track there, but there was one where the forecast track actually did a loop off the southeast U.S. How much will this change by 11 p.m.? You know, I don't think it's going to change a lot now, except I think that the hurricane watches for inland Collier might be upgraded to a hurricane warning. The storm's getting bigger, so it's going to be covering a bigger area as well. I think that is good for that. Let's see, the disturbance next week, we talked about that. How much more of an east-northeast track can we, in my perspective experience? So kind of as I mentioned, there's that gentle push for it to go east. And once we see this, if the inner eye falls apart there and the bigger eye takes over, we're kind of going to be tracking like a big center moving along, and then it's likely going to want to contract and get smaller as well. Could it wobble more to the east? Some of the models were indicating more of an eastward motion if it got weaker. It's certainly not getting weaker, but it is going to be disrupted eventually by shear. In fact, I think you can already start to see there on the west side that all of that associated rain there is kind of starting to go out. Now some of that is maybe what we call attenuation from the radar, which is where the radar beam, and I'll stop it here so we can see the radar beams. When the radar beam goes through very heavy precipitation, the radar beam isn't as strong to get through all of it, so you don't see kind of what's on the other side of the storm. So some of that may be attenuation, but I think there also may be a little bit of erosion that's starting to work in on that west side from the shear. So that's certainly something to watch as well. So guys, I really appreciate you sticking around. I apologize from the bottom of my heart for the stream not starting when it did. I made big promises here that I would have the advisory on as soon as it was issued, and I had it on. Unfortunately, I didn't have anybody watching it, so I'll make sure that doesn't happen again, and we will have an update here. Let's do an update at 8 o'clock, okay? Like 7. Let's do an update right at 8 o'clock, and then we'll regroup at 10:30 tonight. And I promise to push the start the stream button. So we'll see you then.